When the Japanese set out to make funding available for the Yamato-class battleships, 2 ships were seen as sufficient to start with, and so Yamato and Musashi's budgets were made available for the 3rd Naval Armament Replenishment Program of 1937. However, with the expiration of the Washington and London naval treaties, the United States and Great Britain both began unrestricted ship construction, and so Japan viewed it necessary to construct 2 more Yamato-class battleships at a minimum, and their budgets were approved for the 4th Fleet Completion Program of 1939. While the 2 new Yamato-class battleships were to be identical sisters to the Yamato and Musashi, there were a series of improvements made to the designs internally that would improve the survivability of the ships. When World War II began in Europe in 1939, Japan observed the naval warfare occurring and recognized that a new magnetic mine was being used by the British, which in theory could penetrate the double bottom of the Yamato and Musashi as designed. The Japanese recognized that they needed to reinforce the bottom of the 2 new ships, and so they decided that a triple bottom beneath magazines and machinery spaces was necessary. While a triple bottom was included beneath the magazines, they could not include a triple bottom beneath the machinery spaces, so they reinforced the double bottom to compensate for the lacking triple, and during experiments with a 300-kilogram charge at a distance of 2.5 meters, they found that the reinforcement and triple bottom additions were sufficient to stop magnetic mines from causing leakage in internal compartments. There was a cost to reinforcing the double bottom and adding a triple bottom. It increased the ship's weight. And so, weight had to come off somewhere else, and the only place they could take it from was the armor, since, as initially designed, the Yamato and Musashi had a series of reserve armor thicknesses in the event that 18-inch guns or larger were introduced in the United States Navy earlier than anticipated. To summarize that statement, armor could be removed from certain areas of the ship, and it would not sacrifice the ship's defensive qualities as initially required. The main armor belt of 41 centimeters would be reduced to 40 centimeters, the armored deck of 20 centimeters would be reduced to 19 centimeters, and the 56 centimeter barbettes would be reduced to 54 centimeters. The fleet operation room aboard Yamato and Musashi was seen as a little too small for the combined fleet commander's staff, and so the fleet operation room aboard the 2 new ships was to be slightly extended. The final change that was authorized was the old Type 89 12.7 centimeter dual-purpose gun was to be swapped out with the newer Type 98 10 centimeter dual-purpose gun. There are 2 more changes to the design that were discussed, but as far as I can tell, they were not authorized for implementation. The first one was the reinforcement of the armor defenses of the secondary 15.5 centimeter turrets, which were the turrets removed from the Mogami-class heavy cruisers. Because these turrets were already completed units and were being reused from older ships, it appears that the Japanese were unable to find a satisfactory way of reinforcing the armor of already existing turrets, and so they decided not to reinforce it. The second alteration in the design that was discussed that does not appear to have been implemented was a reduction in fuel storage, since it appeared that Yamato and Musashi carried an excess for what was initially required. However, to prevent major alterations to the design and to reduce planning time, it appears that the Japanese decided to retain the same fuel capacity. With that, the alterations to the design were completed, and the 2 new ships could be ordered, with hull 110 being ordered from the Yokosuka Navy Yard, and its keel was laid down on the 4th of May 1940 in the No. 6 building dock. The No. 6 building dock was not actually large enough to support hull No. 110, and so as construction began, the dock was extended alongside the ship. Hull No. 111 was ordered from the Kirei Navy Yard, and its keel was laid down in the same dry dock that Yamato was built in on the 7th of November 1940. The construction of both ships progressed at an acceptable pace, and appeared that they were keeping to schedule until the 8th of December 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and it was ordered that both battleships' construction be temporarily suspended. Within a few months, the Japanese recognized that the materials necessary for constructing the 2 battleships could be better utilized in other ship projects, and so Hull 110 and 111 were both cancelled, with Hull 110 being ordered to be completed up to the middle deck, and in some locations the upper deck, so it could be launched to clear the building dock, while Hull 111 was ordered to be broken up in March of 1942, and its materials being used to construct freighters. Battleship design work would continue with hulls 797, 798, and 799. However, in June of 1942, Japan lost 4 aircraft carriers at the Battle of Midway, and the 5th Naval Armament Replenishment Program, which was supposed to incorporate those 3 battleships, was improvised to incorporate the Urgent Aircraft Carrier Reinforcement Program and the abolishment of all battleship projects. The Aircraft Carrier Reinforcement Program would see projects G-13 and G-16 prioritized. G-13 would become Taiho, and G-16 would become the Unryu class, and it also stipulated for G-17, which was the ordered conversion of Hull 110 into an aircraft carrier. Japan was one of the most experienced nations when it came to converting ships into aircraft carriers, and they had converted one battleship before, the Kaga, so it only made sense to use this mostly completed hull for an aircraft carrier platform. The conversion of Hull 110 into an aircraft carrier was ordered to be completed by January of 1945 by the Naval General Staff. This was a very short time for the design and construction process, and as a result, Project G-13 was used as a foundation for designing the aviation handling facilities. This would greatly reduce the design time needed. Even though Taiho was being used as a foundation, there were still significant differences because the ships themselves were different. Taiho was a keel-up carrier design, while 110 was supposed to be a battleship, and this meant that the metacentric height of the battleship was different from that of Taiho, and 2 hangars for aircraft were not possible, meaning the new ship could only have 1 aviation hangar installed, with a capacity of anywhere from 50 to 60 planes, depending on what planes the Japanese would be putting in the hangar. This small air group for such a large ship meant that many sections of the ship, particularly the magazines for the 46cm main battery guns, would be left unused, and as a result the Japanese decided to convert several spaces of the battleship's hull into storage locations for additional ordnance, fuel, and aircraft components in order to reinforce the Unryu class carrier's offensive capabilities during battle. As they used their materials and lost aircraft, Shinano would be able to provide them with replenishments so they could keep the battle going. While the definite number of components Shinano was capable of carrying for replenishment aircraft is unknown, it is speculated to be anywhere from 100 to 130 aircraft. This means that during a battle scenario, Shinano should be capable of replenishing 2 and potentially 3 Unryu class carriers. Since Shinano was supposed to be a support ship for the frontline carriers, it would be in the thick of aircraft carrier battle, and being a large, slow ship made it an enticing target for enemy pilots, and this meant that the ship, just like Taiho, was to have a partially armored flight deck. The armored segment of the flight deck would extend between the after end of the forward elevator and the forward end of the after elevator, just like on Taiho. The flight deck's maximum armor thickness would be 9.5 centimeters, with a 2 centimeter splinter protection backing. In theory, this armor protection was supposed to keep Shinano's hangars safe from the United States 1,000-pound semi-armor piercing bomb dropped at standard altitudes. The ship's avgas tanks would also receive armor protection, being encased within 18 centimeters of armor. As for the main armor belt and main armor deck of the battleship hull, these would see reductions in their values. The main armor deck would be reduced to just 10 centimeters at its maximum thickness, which was less than half of what was initially intended for the battleship. As for the main armor belt, the armor already installed around the 46cm magazines would retain its 40cm thickness. However, the armor belt protecting the machinery spaces would be reduced to just 15 centimeters. When all was said and done, the Japanese were looking at an aircraft carrier with a standard displacement of 65,000 tons. The overall design was completed in November of 1942, and the working plans for the shipyard were completed by January of 1943, and reconstruction officially commenced. The battleship was now going to be an aircraft carrier. On the 1st of July 1944, hull number 110 was redesignated as number 212, and it was officially named Shinano. Following the Battle of the Marianas in late July of 1944, when Japan lost 3 aircraft carriers, including the Taiho, it was ordered that iron concrete be poured underneath and around the sides of the aviation fuel tanks to protect them from torpedo hits, and the construction of the ship was ordered to be accelerated so it could be completed by mid-October. On the 5th of October 1944, at 8 a.m., Shinano was launched for the first time. However, there was a premature opening of the caisson, which forced water into the dry dock at an accelerated pace, and it shoved Shinano forward, damaging its bulbous bow, and then it shoved it backwards, damaging one of its propellers. 3 days later, the ship was moved out of the dry dock for its official naming ceremony, before it was placed back in the dry dock for repairs. On the 26th of October, repairs to Shinano were completed, and it was removed from the dry dock a second time. On the 1st of November, Shinano was photographed by a B-29 flying over Yokosuka Harbor, and as a result of this sighting, the Japanese decided that Shinano would be completed at the Kirei Navy Yard. On the 19th of November, Shinano was officially commissioned and registered at the Yokosuka Navy Arsenal. It would then be loaded with 6 Shinyo suicide boats and 50 Oka rocket bombs en route for Kirei, and the ship would depart Yokosuka on the 28th of November. At 3:09 a.m. on the 29th of November, while en route to Kirei, Shinano was struck by torpedoes fired from the submarine USS Archerfish, which would eventually result in the incomplete carrier sinking. With Shinano having sunk, the Imperial Japanese Navy would never again be able to construct an aircraft carrier over the size of 25,000 tons. With that having been said, there is nothing more to add on to this topic for today. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.